Thralls of Change. Only the weak and the witless succumb to fate rather than mastering it. So claim the sorcerers of the Thousand Suns. These scions of the Cyclopean Primarch, Magnus the Red, are egotistical warrior mages. They bend unfettered magics and unclean sorcery to their will, distort destiny, and transmute all before them in roiling waves of change. Perceptions twist with abhorrent illusions where the Thousand Suns stride. At their command, the foe's flesh mutates into unholy forms, where their doomed enemies muster a mundane opposition. The Thousand Suns unleash warp flame and sorcerous firepower to scour defensive holdouts. They fence minds with empiric madness and draw forth the widespread gibberings of demons with forbidden rites. The sorcerers' numbers are few. At their command are ranks of hollow warriors, suits of sorcerous battle plate, haunted and animated by ancient spirits who fire barrages of arcane bolts. War herds of bestial mutants screech and caw as they flock towards the sorcerer's opponents, savage blades ready to strike. Lumpen monstrosities and terrifying spawn lumber alongside sigil-carved battle tanks, which unleash ensorcelled shells, and demon engines possessed by cackling entities, with the power to manipulate reality to their sinister schemes. Insanity reigns where these diabolical champions of Tzeentch set their fateful gaze. Magnus dreamed. Soul-stuffed slivers of the demon Primarch coiled through multiple fates. Some maintained his corporeal manifestation in the objective present, seated in a ritual circle atop the Tower of the Cyclops. Others spooled long destinies in search of the artifact he desired, the Morcaptic syllabary, and the means by which he would acquire it. Within one of his potential fates, his self-slivers beheld a future echo of Magnus, at war upon a battlefield scant years into a possible future. The two aspects of Magnus regarded one another. "I seek an answer," the dreamer projected. "There will be a price," the warrior countered. The dreamer's anger blossomed. Prices were feared only by the ignorant. "Show me how I can come to seize the Morcaptic syllabary." The fatescape trembled at the violence of the dreamer's psychic command. In response, the warrior became more substantial. Reality rippled outwards from his taloned feet as his demon flesh shimmered and his great wings unfurled. Gritty indigo rock of a dried-up delta spread out under a dark sky as the fatescape transmuted. Dozens, then hundreds of soul cells flared with pinpricks of light, solidifying into two armies as the vision emerged from a formless haze. His sons, blazing with their gifts, led squads of those others, the husks Ahriman had created. Amidst his sons, the dreamer recognized Aertep Veshret, an archmagister who commanded a notable sect of the Legion. Battle tanks ground forward, shining with the light of sorcerous sigils, and firing salvos that were grey in comparison. Herds of braying Zangors stampeded into the enemy. Facing them were entrenched mortals, guttering in the face of his son's vitality, with others cowering in the lee of armoured transports. The dreamer saw none were a match for the change that would engulf them. The dreamer followed the warrior, watching closely as his other self stepped seamlessly into the roiling battlefront of movement, sound, and light. The warrior killed with gestures that unmade matter. He spoke hexes, the words manifesting into reality as spiraling beams of empiric power. He soared on prismatic feathers to land amidst a squadron of transports, and carved them apart with a sweep of his blade, its mutating form a nonogenic riddle. More of the delta became visible to the dreamer. The spectres of ruins materialized, and the dreamer saw an ugly citadel looming beyond them on the other side of the delta. It was layered in a distinctive pelt of petty secrets and worthless cat-trips, as well as a fog of blood, pain and fear. A fortress of the Inquisition, without doubt, he mused. A holdfast of those tinkerers who believed themselves worthy judges of humanity's destiny. Just so, the warrior replied. Airtep worried its location from the mind of one of the Citadel's rival factions. In this astral projection, the dreamer could perceive a radiance seeping from underneath the Citadel. The glow from the more captic syllabary passed through rock and metal, weak wards and ever-weakening energy fields, just as it had passed the scrutiny of the Citadel's masters. The dreamer felt a sudden twisting of the fates. From above, their approach masked, until now, by darkness and the sorcerous anarchy of the battle, a squadron of gunships screamed into one flank. They scoured their landing site with heavy weapons, cracking open the armor of rubric marines, killing Magnus's gifted sons. In concert with this aerial strike, a column of tracked transports surged out of hiding on the other flank. Squads of elite soldiers disembarked, sizing through closely packed Zangors with powerful las beams. The Citadel's inquisitorial masters were not without deceit of their own. "You will prepare for this," came the warrior's voice. The dreamer knew how he could. With each contemplation of a counterattack, it appeared here in this possible future. Helldrakes that until now had only been in potentia intercepted the gunships with raking talons and gouts of warp flame. A sorcerous portal yawned into being amidst the Citadel's shock assault sally, disgorging squads of Scarab-occult Terminators, whose existence here in this future had only just been formed with the dreamer's thought. These and the other deceptions, illusions, and treacheries would need to be prepared for this future, but the dreamer would now see it done. Fixated on such counters to the Citadel's attempts at defense, his attention was suddenly drawn to an empiric scream and the rippling of reality as a spell slipped out of control. It was Airtep. The dreamer saw him consumed in rainbow-hued fire, and his soul shredded by a psychic construct too much for him to contain. The dreamer dismissed the loss as trivial. The price was worth the insights he had gleaned here. He witnessed his warrior self annihilate the last of the defenders and begin to stride towards the Citadel's now defenseless entrance. The vision faded. Within the tower of the Cyclops, the sliver of Magnus the Red, who occupied what his sons called the present, tallied the threads he now knew needed to be woven. The being sensed the approach of one of his sons. It was Veshret, of course, here to crow about the truth he had forced from his prisoner. Tzeentch's Legion. Of all Tzeentch's mental thralls, the Thousand Sons are the favoured servants. They are a twisted brotherhood of transhuman sorcerers and soul-bound spirit warriors, all steeped in corrupted magics. One of the original traitor legions who turned against humanity 10 millennia ago, the Thousand Sons feed their lust for esoteric power and vengeance by weaving destructive schemes of empirically fueled witchery. The Thousand Sons were once a legion of loyal space marines, hailed as amongst humanity's greatest defenders. Created through the arcane genetic science of the Emperor, they were granted incredible power and raised above the common herd of men and women they fought for. Forged into demigods with transhuman strength, they were equipped with some of mankind's greatest weapons and armor, and charged with securing humanity's fate amongst the stars. However, all the boons the Emperor granted stoked a need to uncover the secrets of yet more. They turned their faces from the Emperor and followed their Primarch, Magnus the Red, into treachery. Ever since, the Thousand Sons have been a malefic hex upon the galaxy, and amongst the greatest threats to the Imperium of mankind. Although a legacy of ancient betrayal, mutation, and fell sorcery, has left the Thousand Sons' mortal warriors few in number compared to other traitor legions. Those that survive possess incredible psychic power, wedded to the genetically augmented prowess of their Space Marine heritage. Like all supreme manipulators, the Legion's psykers have their servile pawns. At their command march what remains of the Legion's other warriors. Cursed by a terrible spell thousands of years ago, rubric marines and scarab occult terminators exist as rune-etched suits of armor animated by the trapped spirits of the sorcerer's battle brothers. Besides ancient battle tanks aglow with arcane sigils, the sorcerers also call upon all manner of mutated Zangor beastmen, screeching their praise of Tzeentch, as well as insane grotesques saturated with magical power and growling engines possessed by demons of the warp. Between their physical and sorcerous power and the fell knowledge they possess, the Thousand Sons see themselves as beyond any mortal notion of restraint or limit. They each feel a constant, desperate need to fuel their power further, either heedless of the cost or, more often, with an unknowing thrall already in place to suffer any consequences. They believe they alone have the power and the will to uncover the secrets of the warp, to master the demonic entities that reside there, and to exploit the timeless infinities and fractal strands of fate the realm offers for their ends. They seek to breach the limits of their minds and transcend the boundaries of existence. Their psychic capabilities and the inconstant and unreliable favor of Tzeentch, the Chaos God of hidden knowledge and magical power, leave them in no doubt that such boundaries do not apply to them. Whatever secrets exist in the universe are theirs, they believe, by right. With an avid hunger for empiric enigmas and malefic rituals, they seek out forbidden lore and cursed artifacts of occult significance. They ransack magical libraries for their arcane texts and bleed psychic prisoners of their otherworldly power. The guardians of mystical vaults and Xenos fanes are smashed asunder or transmuted into hideous mounds of multicolored flesh before the Thousand Sons Magisters effortlessly pick apart sorcerous wards to reach their prize. Sites saturated in the power of the warp, heretical tomes penned by the insane or the possessed, and artifacts inhabited by malefic entities, all draw the avaricious gaze of the Legion's sorceress adepts. For all their scholarly disdain and esoteric ambitions, the Thousand Sons' hearts are as embittered and spite-filled as any heretics. The power they wield is often turned to schemes of vengeance upon the Imperium of mankind for the ancient wrongs done to them. Some of the raids and massacres the Thousand Sons orchestrate upon Imperial worlds, the sorcerers claim to be vindication of their righteousness. Ritual sacrifices of the crews of entire patrol fleets have been committed in malicious retaliation for real or imagined slights. Other ambushes, disruptions, assassinations, and slaughters may be intended to twist fate and force destiny onto paths that suit Magnus's scions. Equally, many of the Thousand Sons' attacks have no immediate motive. Many are undoubtedly part of the sorcerer's labyrinthine plans that are unfathomable to their enemies, but others appear so inexplicable that they seem like madness. As with many followers of the Chaos God Tzeentch, the Thousand Sons are agents of spiritual and physical change. Mutation has haunted the Thousand Sons since their very inception. After embracing the power of Tzeentch wholeheartedly, many have come to bear his mark in some form of physical aberration. Some abhor such manifestations, recalling the horror with which the Legion viewed the uncontrollable flesh change. Many of these seek to employ ever greater sorceries to purge themselves of what they consider taint, or to redirect its insidious onset onto luckless servants, even as their use of the warp power saturates their form with more malignancy. Others accept the bizarre and changeable colors, deformities, and appendages of their mutations as a sign of dark favor from their fickle deity, and bear them openly. Planet of the Sorcerers. The original homeworld of the Thousand Suns, Prospero, was reduced to utter ruin and devastation amidst a galaxy-spanning civil war known as the Horus Heresy. Now Magnus the Red holds court upon an insane world of ensorcelled geometries, magical vortices, and a ceaselessly transmuting landscape. Sortiarius, known to some of the Legion's enemies and wary allies as the planet of the sorcerers, orbits Prospero's star like a changeling twin of the ruined homeworld, translocated into the system from the warp through a ritual of obscene sacrifice. Sortiarius seethes with raw empiric energy. Empirogeometrical constructs protect Magnus's domain with interwoven spells, shielding it with illusionary glamours as they probe any who approach for weakness. The demon world serves the Primarch and his gene sons as sanctum, sorceress laboratory, and, not least, as a martial staging ground for many of the Thousand Suns' most destructive wars. The sorcerer's glittering towers, impossibly huge mobile fiefdoms of insane architecture and coruscating energy, travel Sortiarius's mutated landscape, following a cult parabola. Mzangor herds and mindless chaos spawn prey upon each other across topographical features whose form or even existence can flux from moment to moment. The only fixed point in this hellscape of change and sorcery is Tizca, once the capital of Prospero, now this huge city of veined megaliths, gargoyle-crusted obelisks, pyramids of bone, and flocks of demonic abominations, stands as testimony to the treachery of the Thousand Suns. Early Millennium 41. Power Unbound. In their war with the Necrons of the Nephrek dynasty, the Thrall band known as the Silver Suns loose a quartet of Helldrakes upon a Tesseract vault. The winged monstrosities tear the prism open, freeing the Catan shard within, allowing it to begin a 1,000-year rampage through Nephrek space. Ritual Cabals. Alone, a sorcerer of the Thousand Suns is a deadly psycho-lord, whose combination of supreme empiric talent and gross ambition leads them to wield the horrifying powers of the warp with greater mastery than their rivals amongst the other traitor legions. Their sorcery and esoteric knowledge make them highly sought after by other heretic warbands, and some bargain their services, and those of their automata thralls, for all manner of strange gifts. Amongst the thrall bands, the magisters of the Thousand Suns are more dangerous still. Despite the lies, politicking, rampant greed, and sorcerous manipulation that sometimes put sorcerers at odds, when they pool their power, few can stand against them. Together, cabals of sorcerers can weave grand rituals and complex spells that would be dangerous to attempt alone. The results of such rituals can be apocalyptic. Some invocations can open a route for the demons of the warp to claw their way into real space. Some incantations can crack continents. There are conjurations that enable the Thousand Suns to walk between worlds, spells that distort time and fate, and hexes that corrupt the destinies of entire planets. The Coven of Three. 9 centuries have passed since the eerie triad of sorcerers known as Tiang, Tior, and Tiel completed the final step of the forbidden rite of Vordrek's conjuration. On that night of blood and terror, they ritually sacrificed every last offender of St. Basolius' shrine. In so doing, they bound their souls and minds inextricably in their warp, and thus magnified their gestalt physical might by a 3-fold magnitude. A silent communion allows these sorcerers to scheme together, even should they be battling light years apart, spreading confusion by claiming one another's names. All the while, each plots the other's death to claim the power of the triad for themselves. Unfettered hubris. 10,000 years ago, through their arrogance and pride, no less than that of their Primarch Magnus the Red, the Thousand Suns turned traitor. What had been a legion of learned warriors fighting to unite the galaxy under mankind became a heretical coven of sorcerers eager to employ forbidden power. The Thousand Sons were inheritors of their Primarch's mental and physical fortitude, but were also disposed to unstable psychic mutations. Magnus's reunion with his legion was a great boon for the Thousand Sons. The rampant manifestation of psykers throughout their ranks had caused them to be feared and despised by many of the Imperium, with some calling for their complete eradication. Even amongst their fellow Space Marines, some viewed the Thousand Sons as a danger to humanity. An entire legion of potential mutants armed and armored with Imperial technology. By relocating the Thousand Sons to Prospero, Magnus saved his sons from the witch hunts that sought to purge the Imperium of Psykers. He then turned his colossal intellect towards instructing his gene progeny in psychic mastery, training them to control the enormous power within them. Some of his sorceress gene sons believed it was at this early stage that Magnus first entreated the Chaos Gods for the power to stabilize the mutations that ate at his legion. Whether or not the threshold of sorcery was crossed at this time, Magnus fostered in the Thousand Sons some of the most potent librarians of the epoch. Their might was terrifying to behold. The powers employed by the Thousand Sons did not go unnoticed by the other Legiones Astartes. Battle Brothers witnessed their Prosperine allies tearing open psychic moors in the skies above battlefields, from which bolts of eldritch energy raked the enemy ranks. They saw them unfold prismatic hexes and act on knowledge they should not have been able to possess. Alien war machines were pulverized by force of thought, and the flesh of the faithless was tortuously warped by will alone. Though librarians of many legions possessed similar psychic might, their abilities were disciplined, carefully controlled, and honed to be a tool of the Imperium. The wanton fashion in which the Thousand Sons wielded their psychic energies showed no such restraint, and the effects they achieved were far more terrifying. Such powers had been seen in other places in the galaxy, in dark places the light of the Emperor had not yet reached, on worlds controlled by enclaves of heretics who openly worshipped unknown gods. Warriors of the Great Crusade had felt the same unfettered psychic fury they now saw used by Magnus's legion. Once again, suspicion and mistrust loomed over the Thousand Sons, for even amongst other Imperial psychers, they were seen as practitioners of the abhorrent. Their most vocal detractors were the sepulchral lord of the Death Guard, Mortarion, and the bellicose primarch of the Space Wolves, Leman Russ. In the path Magnus had chosen for his legion, they saw only corruption, and their opposition to their brother threatened to sunder the very foundations of the Emperor's new order. The burning of Prospero. The Emperor sent Leman Russ to lead an occupying force to Prospero and bring Magnus to justice. Many heretic tracts have conjured lurid justifications for this decision, works that have been twisted into impossible contradictions. Whatever transgression had earned the Emperor's ire, it fell to the Space Wolves to end it. But Russ was deceived by Horus, whom he trusted and admired. With Horus's treachery still veiled, the War Master convinced Russ that the Emperor wished him to execute Magnus and eradicate his legion. When the Space Wolves fleet arrived at Prospero, they were utterly unopposed. Some believed that Tzeentch masked their approach, whereas others claimed it was the light of the Emperor that blinded the Thousand Sons to their attackers. Others still say that Magnus shielded the far-seeing vision of his sorcerers and prevented them from perceiving the coming Space Wolves. For in his despair, he realized that he had chosen the wrong path in his attempts to save the Imperium, and now invited the retribution that would befall his world. Whatever the cause, the Space Wolves were able to bombard Prospero mercilessly. Fires raged across the planet's surface, consuming all that Magnus had created until only the capital of Tizca remained. Finally, unable to bear the irrevocable destruction of his gene sons and all he had built, the Cyclops of Prospero wrought a great spell of translocation. With a whispered word of power, Magnus was spirited away before death could claim him and sent adrift through the warp. There he saw the salvation that had eluded him. He beheld sorcery incarnate. With inextricable finality, Magnus the Red forsook his emperor and gave himself entirely to the dark god Tzeentch. In that instant, what remained of Tizca and the Thousand Suns vanished from the face of Prospero. When the Thousand Suns were seen again, they were operating from a demon world, Sortiarius, the planet of the sorcerers. Early Millennium 41, the Beast Within. On the high-grav world of Krachordia, abhuman Ogrin tribes bring down a mutant beast amidst the stalagmite jungle. The hunters find an undulating sac within its innards and feel a compulsion to bring the growth back to their tribes. Eventually, it splits open and a radiant creature emerges. In their eyes, it is perfect in form, and they fall to their knees during worship. It is not long before they begin to change in its image. Months later, the Astromilitarum fleets arrive to collect their tithe of warriors from Krachordia. They find no trace of the Ogrin tribes, only a world overrun with hulking chaos spawn. Eldritch stratagems. The air crackles with empiric energy as the Thousand Suns make their approach. An aura of maddening flux radiates from the traitor legion, twisting hope into despair as the chaos-bound warriors emerge onto the battlefield from tears in reality. As a psychic presence flares brighter, time shifts, stretching seconds into seeming eternities and crushing minutes into fleeting moments. The only anchors to reality that remain in the face of a Thousand Suns attack are the racing heartbeats of the fearful and the incessant pounding of rubric marines advancing in perfect unison. From the silent, trudging ranks comes a hail of inferno bolts. These ensorcelled projectiles unleash the baleful energies of the immaterium upon impact, tearing through armor and riving flesh with ease. Even when the enemy returns fire, the Thousand Suns press on unabated. Salvos of shots ricochet harmlessly off the rubric marine's ancient and ornate plating, and energy blasts dissipate in the warp fields that surround each heretic warrior. As the lifeless legions draw closer to the enemy lines, some unleash torrents of warp flame from sigil-crusted projectors, reducing all in their path to bubbling heaps of melted gore and slag. Scarab occult terminators heft curved blades sheathed in shimmering power fields, cleaving effortlessly through any foes that dare obstruct their advance. Enormous battle tanks and engines of war rumble alongside the Thousand Suns, their corrupted machine spirits enslaved to the will of their dark masters. Rivulets of sorcerous energy flow over their gleaming hulls, mutating metal plating into hideously twisted faces and screaming maws. Crushing their enemy's defenses with the sheer weight of firepower, or beneath their adamantine tracks, the vehicles then unload more rubric marines from their transport bays to stride wordlessly into the carnage. The incessant annihilation perpetrated by the Thousand Suns shifts to rapacious slaughter with a wave of savage herds of Zangors. As their onslaught gains momentum, the cacophony of inhuman braying and bellowed prayers is added to by blasts of rugged firearms and the revving of chainswords. Ignoring those in their number who fall to incoming fire, Tzeentch's mutant foot soldiers hurl themselves bodily into combat, reveling in the transformation they work on their enemy's flesh with every hack and gouge. The concentration of sorcery and the psychic agony of the dying pierces the veil between real space and the warp, and draws forth Tzeentch's demonic servants, who eagerly leap into the fray. Horrors of varied hue spill through the ruptured membrane of reality, obliterating the minds of those they behold, or simply incinerating them with coruscating flames. The skies fill with floating flamers, unleashing demonic fire upon those below, and flights of screamers that swoop down with terrifying swiftness to shred the flesh of the living with their fanged maws. The hellscape of the battlefield becomes even more nightmarish as twisted monstrosities, neither natural nor demonic, emit soul-shredding howls. Chaos spawn, shambling heaps of musculature, claws and jagged protrusions, barrel forwards to eviscerate their enemies with unthinking fury. Those unfortunate foes caught in the flux fields emanating from Mutilath vortex beasts are ravaged by hideous mutations, their internal organs bursting outwards and their bodies contorting into paradoxical configurations. Fueled by the unquenchable anguish of entombed battle brothers, hellbrutes pulverize the packed ranks that stand before them, while demon engines stomp or swoop across a battlefield, blasting apart enemy armor and crushing infantry beneath their massive frames. Spectrum of destruction. When the Thousand Suns march to war, the very stars tremble before their displays of sorcerous might. Great swathes of the galaxy are consumed by warp flame, and anarchy and madness reign supreme. Yet each battle is but a component in their impenetrable ploys, a single rite with a purpose incomprehensible to all but the most twisted of minds. Every merciless onslaught launched is but a single step in a millennia-spanning stratagem, and each world turned into a blazing pyre is a single component in yet another unfathomable ritual. Though the Thousand Suns perpetrate their horrific wars throughout the galaxy, they do not see warfare as an end unto itself. Instead, through their studied violence, they seek to wreak change upon the galaxy and to draw to themselves power and knowledge. By divining the currents of fate, both past and future, they identify crux points in time, moments where calamitous upheaval can be wrought for the glory of Tzeentch. To aid their grand designs, the Thousand Suns launch myriad raids on the worlds of the Imperium and Xenos planets. Amidst the fires of these incursions, they wrest arcane technologies from long-forgotten reliquaries, despoil temples of their sacred tomes, and bend the faith of the masses to Tzeentch's ever-shifting purpose. The lore of millennia is consumed and digested by the rapacious minds of the Legion's sorcerers, who glean hidden truths that help guide them along their ruinous path. In their campaigns, the Thousand Suns conquer vast tracts of real space from which they draw the resources for their arcane war efforts. As they advance across the stars, their lust for knowledge brings them to sites of eldritch power, places saturated with the magic of profane rituals performed millennia ago. Some are worlds whose ancient inhabitants worshipped the Chaos Gods. Others are planets with hateful entities buried deep beneath their surface. The baleful energy that hangs thick around such sites creates weak points in the veil separating real space from the warp. Here, the Thousand Suns commune with empiric consciousnesses, beckoning them to enter the material plane and entreating them to share prescient visions of the skeins of time. These places of power also serve as anchor points to which exalted sorcerers and demon princes tether their enormous system-spanning spells. Gigantic hexes are etched into the fabric of space itself, corrupting the reality within their bounds and causing it to tear violently open. From these gaping wounds, the warp bleeds into existence, ravaging the minds of mortals with nightmarish perplexions and birthing demonic beasts that descend hungrily upon the worlds of real space. The pan-demonic rituals by which Tzeentch's scintillating legions gain access to real space can be wrought in insidious and destructive ways. The patterns to secure their presence are crafted by the Thousand Suns far in advance. Having identified the site of the future conflict through the entrails of captured psychers, the passing of the warp's whispers, or one of many other means, Magnus's most oracular gene sons lay their plans. Some will foment cults worshipping a particular facet of Tzeentch, using empty promises to pressure their human or alien agents to cite their gatherings and rituals in locations of occult significance. Their acts of worship wear away at the barriers holding back the horrors of the warp. Some Thousand Suns also empirically taint pilgrims or shipments of resources heading to a world, their arrival at the planet building up a nexus of sacrificial power. It might be achieved through words or images, secreting seemingly innocuous terms into a population's everyday usage until their circulating repetition forms an inescapable lexical incantation. Other thrall bands take a more direct and immediate approach to opening a path for demons. The concentration of souls and the violent acts of change from life to death in cryptometric arrays on the battlefield conform their own pattern. Seemingly random surges by the Thousand Suns in one direction, the pulling back in another, goading sallies by the foe, and even offering up sacrifices of the Thrallband's force to destruction by the enemy can all, in truth, be the opening gambits of a cosmic rite. The sorcerers unleash terrifying psychic illusions to stoke fear in their foes. They thrust doubt or gibbering insanity into those enemies who would otherwise inspire courage. They twist communications to stall reinforcements or land the foe's artillery on friendly units. Finally, the soul tally their forces take with arcane ordnance, mutagenic fire, and sizzling beams of psychic power, and the manifold forms of their murders could open the way to the warp's denizens. The sects of the Thousand Suns prosecute their wars in various ways and towards inscrutable ends. Some blaze like a comet as they carve their ruinous warpath through space. The psychic scream preceding their onslaught is a portent of doom, heralding to all before them the horrors that will soon be brought into being. Others conduct their campaigns more subtly, silently preparing their offensives until the strike is at hand. The Thrallbands of these sects insinuate themselves throughout a war zone, whereupon they work to sever those strands of fate that would oppose their total victory. Psychic whispers are sent echoing through the immaterium to misdirect their foes. Time and space are bent to steer battle fleets wildly off course, and the currents of the warp are shifted so that enemy psychers are consumed by the horrendous backfire of their arcane machinations. Such malefic dissimulation, twisting perceptions and fracturing convictions, can even allow the sorcerers of a Thrallband to enter the mind of an enemy general. From there, they can reap battle plans or erase carefully considered countermeasures from their foes' memories. As combat commences, the general's army faces impossibly superior intelligence, and the Thousand Suns slaughter their floundering opponents with brutal precision. For thousands of years, the sons of Magnus have been a scourge upon the galaxy, and over that time, many amongst their ranks have fallen in battle. But the rubric of Ahriman, while stripping the Legion's warriors of their corporeality, rendered those it touched immortal. The dust containing the remnant essence of these warriors has been poured out on countless battlefields, blown from rents blasted in their arcanely sealed armor and trampled into the mud. When drawn together by a sorcerer, the warrior's essence can be rejoined with its armor, and the spectral soldier can rise once more. Sorcerers seeking to raise an army of rubricae hunt out the remains of the fallen, burning to the ground cities built atop forgotten sites of battle. Any surviving inhabitants are swiftly massacred by the newly risen warriors. Ambitious sorcerers also go to great lengths to procure demon engines, with which they can loose even greater destruction upon their enemies. Fell pacts are made with warpsmiths, or the devotees of the dark mechanicum, who forge abominations of metal infused with empiric entities, the Thousand Suns offering sorcerous knowledge in exchange for the creation of these demonic machines. Such pacts are fraught with betrayal, for both the Thousand Suns and those they barter with seek only to further their standing with the ruinous powers, and will gladly betray one another when they can find an opportunity. A sect of the Thousand Suns may join forces with the warbands of another traitor legion, only to turn upon their allies when the fickle winds of fate shift, or they may drive Xenos invaders from an imperial world, only to sacrifice the planet's population in a Pyrrhic ritual. Individual sects within the Thousand Suns may even go to war with one another, as the cryptic machinations of the great conspirator set one scion of Magnus against another. In this seeming madness lies the method of Tzeentch. From continual anarchy and upheaval, their will is made manifest through the galaxy, and upon their favored mortal champions they bestow manifold gifts. Ultimately, each Thousand Sun sorcerer is driven by selfish desire. Their thirst for arcane power is insatiable, leading them inexorably down the path that leads towards demonhood. Only those most faithful to their patron god receive this blessing, leaving centuries of anguish and destruction in their wake. A labyrinthine legion. Convoluted cabals. After the rubric of Ahriman, the confluence of once noble fellowships that had compromised the legion was replaced by a hierarchy born of Magnus's will. The Thousand Sons were divided into 9 great cults, each devoted to a separate facet of the god of change, all serving a purpose in their unfathomable plans. Though the planet of the sorcerers is a world in constant flux, its inhabitants are governed by a strict order set in place by Magnus. The spectral remnants of the Legion's warriors, known as the Rubricae, reign over throngs of mortal thralls, Zangors and mutated beasts infused with the power of the warp, while above the Rubricae is the former bodyguard of the Crimson King, known as a Sekhmet. Raised above all these is the Rohirrim, a coven of 9 exalted sorcerers and demon princes favoured by Tzeentch more than any other amongst the Thousand Sons, save Magnus himself. From this overarching hierarchy, the Legion's forces are divided into 9 great cults. At the head of each is a member of the Rohirrim, bearing the ancient rank of Magister Templi. Beneath each Magister Templi are 9 other demon princes and sorcerers who, though lesser in rank, still bear Tzeentch's favour. These 9 steer the cult along the ever-changing paths of fate. Other sorcerers hold lower positions and, along with troops, tanks, mutants and demon engines, can claim immense swathes of real space for their masters. Each has worlds from which they draw resources and magical energy, and populous planets to provide them with constant streams of sacrificial soldiers, slaves and subjects for their arcane experiments. Each great cult is an amalgam of the twisted minds of those in its ranks, and though inherently self-serving, their members are ultimately bent towards the same purpose. To a mortal mind untouched by Tzeentch's corruptions, the plans laid out by these great cults are utterly unfathomable, but to the Thousand Sons they are both a form of profane worship and a route to power. Often the goals of a given great cult will undermine or even contradict those of the other cults. As such, the great cults are wary of one another, and their alliances are ever shifting. The power and influence of each is also in constant flux, with everyone going through cycles of activity and torpidity, as befits their unscrutable machinations. It is scarce for the entirety of a great cult to deploy in a single war zone, though when this does happen, the fabric of reality quakes in their presence. More often, the malevolent goals require their forces to be spread throughout space and time, allowing each splinter to play a role in some larger and more sinister stratagem. A great cult, therefore, comprises many sects, each of which prosecute their own seemingly unconnected campaigns. Where the combined forces of a great cult could set a whole system ablaze, a single sect can still devastate a planet. Several sects will launch simultaneous strikes across large tracts of real space, plunging entire subsectors into disarray and panic. As nearby worlds send reinforcements to the embattled planet, more Thousand Sons appear to attack where defenses have been stretched to breaking point. Devastating as they are, these attacks rarely give any clue to the ultimate goals of the great cult. A sect comprises multiple thrall bands, which can also act independently. With several units of Thousand Sons bolstered by auxiliary troops and vehicles, a single thrall band can obliterate an enemy fortress or turn a city into a blazing pyre. Several thrall bands operate in complete isolation. Some have been exiled from the planet of the sorcerers, while others choose to leave to pursue their own ends. But even these forces ultimately serve the goals of one of the 9 great cults, whether they know it or not. The 9 great cults. The cult of prophecy sorcerers are guided by incessant whispers that bleed from the warp. From these, they divine the outcomes of multiple futures and seek out events that can be twisted for their purpose. The cult of time, meanwhile, is enthralled by the flow of time as an unwrought resource that can be shaped into a weapon. the members of the Cult of Mutation embody Tzeentch's transfiguring aspect, embracing the warping of flesh and the twisting of reality itself. The Cult of Scheming is perhaps the most insidious of the great cults. Every conquest and withdrawal of its sorcerers is a perfectly planned maneuver, a single step that leads towards some unseen masterstroke. The Cult of Magic is dedicated to the unfettered use of sorcery, often waging campaigns to secure arcane objects that, once seized, are foci in the weaving of devastating spells. Also drawn to sorcerous curios hidden throughout the galaxy is the Cult of Knowledge, particularly tomes of eldritch learnings and paradoxical logics. The Cult of Change, meanwhile, is anathema to order. They are the great unravelers, imposing their ever-shifting will upon sites of confusing anarchy. Then there is the Cult of Duplicity, its sorcerers at once appearing fractured and singular in their purpose, and the Cult of Manipulation, whose plans use its tendriller web of influence to sway the actions of its enemies. A New Kingdom. The translocation of Sortiarius from the depths of the warp to the Forzea system, alongside the ruin of Prospero, was a staggering work of malefic sorcery. To fuel this spell, countless Imperial servants were sacrificed in deadly wars, planets were corrupted with the stuff of the warp, and the Fenris system suffered the agonizing death of one of its worlds and its entire population. Undoubtedly, some within the Imperium realized what had been done, but far greater threats soon assailed them. The Great Rift was torn across the breadth of the galaxy, swallowing whole sectors of the Imperium and spewing out storms of demonic nightmares and empiric madness. This power saturated everything, provoking an awakening of psychic phenomena. Amongst the anarchy, the demonic manifestations, and the ignition of new empiric storms, incidents of psychic sensitivity upon the Imperium's world soared. The eruption of Sortiarius into real space had been far from Magnus's ultimate goal. Wreathed in oracular pronouncements of long-dead seers and the whispers of Tzeentchian demons, he beheld this empiric awakening of the galaxy's mortals as a long-awaited key to unlock his dreams of enlightening the galaxy. The Crimson King sent a psychic siren signal, urging the gifted of humanity to seek refuge from the intolerant Imperium under his aegis. Together, his message claimed, he and they would forge an advanced utopia of limitless knowledge and peace. The seed is ingrained in all servants of Tzeentch. Magnus's enlightenment will be paved with the sacrifice of the deluded and any he considers unworthy. They will be made hosts for demonic entities, or their souls will be drained to empower ever grander rituals. An update on Arzek Ahriman, Exile Arch-Sorcerer, Architect of the Rubric. Of late, Ahriman's endless quest has focused on the arcane lore and supernatural abilities of the Eldari. On the one hand, Ahriman desires the forbidden knowledge and boundless power within their fabled Black Library. On the other, he is fascinated by the newly risen Ynnari death cult, whose fey powers over mortality itself may unlock the doors to restoring Ahriman's damned brothers. The Black Library lies deep within the maze-like twists and turns of the webway, an interstitial galactic maze between real space and the warp. Those who can locate it face dread and nameless guardians, not to mention the lethal Eldari warrior acrobats known as the Harlequins. None of this dissuades Ahriman. It is said that within the Black Library lies all the accumulated lore the Eldari have ever gathered upon the nature of chaos, not to mention maligned artifacts whose power is beyond imagining. Some say that, through cunning astral projection, Ahriman has already plundered a map of the webway from this hidden trove, but whether this is true or what he plans to do with it, if so, none but the Arch-Sorcerer can say. Perhaps this theft is linked to Ahriman's pursuit of the Ynnari and their prophetess, Yvraine. Certainly, the strange subcult of the Eldari displays the ability to seemingly capture the souls of the dying, and even to restore the essence of one who has passed beyond the mortal veil. How this might aid Ahriman in undoing the dreadful curse he inflicted upon his battle brothers is unclear, but it cannot be a coincidence that he has fought and sought to abduct Ynnari now on several occasions. Ahriman rarely commits to a single scheming endeavour at all. His multi-dimensional plots are a tapestry of strands, and the arch-sorcerer's mind corrals them all. Many thrall bands and sorcerers are under his direct control, even if some know him by aliases. Other outcasts from Magnus's court, those in the demon Primarch's favour, and Tzeentch worshippers of other heretic lineages. That Ahriman's search for eldritch lore and artifacts also increases his own power and influence is not lost on him. He tells himself it is necessary to reverse his legion's curse. I have been Baldermort, your faithful servant. Like and subscribe, tip if I've earned your bounty. And do check out the video description for other entertainment opportunities and links to making savings on games. But most importantly of all, no matter what you do today, do try to make some time for fun. Toodaloo.